If you've been thinking about getting a portable SSD for your computer, this video is for you. We're gonna compare 4 of the top portable SSDs to see which one is the better buy in terms of various categories like design, size, portability, performance, and more. And we're not only gonna run the standard performance benchmarks, but we're also gonna transfer massive files over to these drives to heat them up and see which drive performs the best under stress. And let me tell you, there definitely were a few surprises you don't wanna miss. These aren't any regular SSDs, they're the fastest ones out there, and that's because they all use Thunderbolt 3, which allows for transfer speeds that are over 5 times as fast as regular USB-C SSDs. And since every single new Mac and most new Windows laptops and many desktop computers are starting to come with Thunderbolt 3 ports, these SSDs are the future. So let's compare everything about these 4 portable SSDs to see which one you should buy in 2020. First off, we've got Samsung's super clean, almost Tesla-like X5 SSD. Then we've got the tried and true Lacy Rugged SSD Pro. We've also got the G Technology G Drive Mobile Pro by Western Digital, which is also very reliable. And finally, the Envoy Pro EX, or X, from the well-known Mac-centric brand OWC. Now before we get into this comparison, I want to mention that each of these drives has 1 terabyte of storage, which I would say is the best choice for the price. Let's start off our comparison with portability. The OWC is by far the bulkiest drive out of the bunch, followed by the G Drive and then the Samsung X5, with the Lacy drive being the most portable by far. In terms of design, I think the X5 takes the cake, with the really unique shape, painted finish, and accents on the side and bottom. It's the only one that really screams premium. The Lacy is the runner-up with a really simple and clean black design, and while I don't really like the extra blue accents on the G Drive, it still looks better than the OWC's brick-like design. Now in terms of durability, the Lacy wins by far. It's covered with a rubber bumper all around, so it won't get scratched up like some of the others. It also includes pressure, shock, dust, and even IP67 water resistance, which none of the others have. And it also has 3-meter drop protection. The Samsung X5 actually includes a metal protection frame on the inside to protect the SSD, so it's rated to resist a drop from around 6 feet. But the plastic frame could still crack. The G Drive is actually rated with an impressive 10 feet of drop protection, and while the Envoy Pro X is built out of aluminum and comes with a rubber bumper, it doesn't have any official drop ratings, but it should still be pretty durable. Now let's compare the included Thunderbolt 3 cables. This time, both the Samsung X5 and the G Drive came with high quality cables that are around 1.5 feet long. The Lacy SSD's cable was actually less than half as long, which may be nice for portability, but it's restricting if you want to use the cable for anything else. And the OWC cable is short and permanently attached to the SSD itself, which you obviously can't lose, but it could lead to a nightmare if the cable gets damaged in any way. More on this in just a bit. In terms of the warranties, the Lacy beats the rest of these out by far, with a 5-year warranty, a 5-year data recovery service plan, and a 1-month subscription to all of the Adobe Creative Cloud apps. The G Drive also comes with a 5-year warranty, but the OWC and Samsung drives only come with a 3-year warranty, which is still pretty decent, but it doesn't match up to the others. Now let's get into performance. Before running our speed test, we reformatted all the drives to exFAT, which is the most universal large file format that works on both macOS and Windows 10. For our first test, we used Blackmagic's disk speed test to see the maximum speed these drives can run at, using the 5GB file option. The Samsung X5 was the fastest by about 100 megabytes per second, which is pretty impressive, but we didn't see speeds nearing the advertised 2800 megabytes per second. In terms of the write speeds, the G Drive was actually the fastest, with write speeds of up to 2280 megabytes per second. So between those two benchmarks, it seems like it's a draw between the Samsung and the G Drive. Now let's get into the stress test, where we transferred a 172GB file to and from the drives in our Mac Pro, which runs fast enough to not limit the drives. We noticed that when transferring the file to each drive, the write speed slowed down after a certain amount of data was transferred. After around 48 gigabytes, the Samsung X5 slowed down to around 1200 megabytes per second. For the G Drive, it only took 20 gigabytes of data to slow the drive down to 1400 megabytes per second, faster than the Samsung. Now for the Lacy, it slowed down to a much lower 1000 megabytes per second after 30 gigabytes of data was transferred. And finally, the OWC drive was actually the worst, slowing down to 950 megabytes per second after 30 gigs of data. Now if you don't understand how SLC cache works, let me explain it to you. On each of these drives, the storage is made up of multiple storage chips. Now in most drives, there are some very fast chips and then the rest of them are slower. In the case of the Lacy drive, it has 30 gigs of fast chips that can write at a very fast 1930 megabytes per second, but anything beyond that, up to the rest of the 970 gigs, slows down to around 1000 megabytes per second. That means if you're transferring a file from your computer to the drive that's over 30 gigabytes large, it'll slow down to the slower speeds after 30 gigs have been transferred. So we actually tested how long it took to transfer our 172 gig file to each of the drives, and the G drive was the fastest because even though it had the least amount of cache, the speed of the slower chips was the fastest at 1400 megabytes per second. The Samsung X5 was in second place because it had the most SLC cache, and the slower chips were almost as fast as the chips on the G drive. And out of all of them, the OWC drive was the slowest. Now let's move on to our read speed overheating test. We transferred about 500 gigabytes of data from each drive to our Mac Pro without giving them a chance to cool down to test the cooling performance. And all but one drive performed perfectly fine, not slowing down throughout the entire 500 gigs of data. That one drive actually kept ejecting itself over and over again, so we couldn't even transfer over 200 gigs of data non-stop. And that drive was the OWC Envoy Pro. We tried reformatting it multiple times and nothing would help. We're not sure if we had a bad drive or not, but we didn't experience any issues with the other drives. To make it even worse, the cable is attached permanently, so we couldn't even test out a different cable to see if that was the issue. So in terms of performance, the G drive is the winner, with the Samsung being the runner-up and the OWC being the worst because of the ejection issues. Now we actually dug deep into each drive to figure out which SSD they're packing, and we were able to find the TBW stats for each drive, which is basically the amount of data you can write on the drive before it starts to fail. And to our surprise, the Lacy drive was rated for a much higher amount of data written compared to the other drives, blowing them away in terms of reliability, with the OWC drive being the worst. And one last thing, the Lacy drive is actually the only drive out of the bunch that also works with USB-C, allowing you to transfer data between your Mac and other Windows devices that don't have Thunderbolt 3. Now for our final category, price. Now I want to mention that prices fluctuate all the time, so make sure to check the links down in the description below. The Samsung X5 is currently available for $450 on B&H, and actually $350 on Amazon, but we do expect the price to go down on B&H to match Amazon soon. The G drive is currently $380. The Lacy is $400, and the OWC drive is a much lower $280. So with all of that comparison testing finished, let's finish with our purchasing recommendations. Now although the OWC drive is the cheapest, we would not recommend it because of the bulky size and the permanently attached cable, which can get damaged and render the drive useless. Now if you're looking for the most rugged and reliable drive without caring too much about having the absolute best performance, we would go with the Lacy because of its excellent portability, rugged design, IP67 water resistance, backwards compatibility with USB-C, excellent reliability, and longer 5-year warranties and data rescue services. Now if you're not planning on transferring very large files, we would actually recommend the Samsung X5 because of its sleek design, long Thunderbolt 3 cable, and massive 48 gigs of SoC cache that'll help it be the fastest drive for transferring a lot of small files. Now, while the G Drive doesn't have the best looking or compact design, it gets 10 feet of drop protection, a nice 5-year warranty, a long cable, and by far the fastest performance out of all of these drives. At $380, it's definitely not the cheapest out of the bunch, but it excelled in a lot of the categories and blew the competition away in terms of performance. But once again, if you're all about reliability and you want the freedom to use your drive with not only Thunderbolt 3, but also USB-C, then the Lacy Drive easily beats out the rest, and without a doubt, that's definitely the drive that we would purchase ourselves. Now, we're actually going to be building our own custom DIY portable SSD using a Thunderbolt 3 NVMe SSD enclosure in a PCI Express 4.0 M.2 SSD to see if we can beat the speeds of these drives at a much lower price. So if you're interested in seeing that, click that circle above to subscribe and check out those 2 videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.